The air in the funeral home was thick, heavy with the scent of lilies and whispered accusations. My father's casket sat at the front, polished oak gleaming under the dim lights, but all eyes were on the envelope in my sister Claire's manicured hands. She stood near the podium, her lips curled into a smirk that didn't match the black dress she wore. "Emily," she said, loud enough for the room to hear, "Dad left you nothing. You might as well stop pretending you were ever part of this family." Her words hit like a slap, and the room went silent. My cousin Tom shifted uncomfortably in his seat, and Aunt Linda's eyes darted away. I stood frozen, my heart pounding, the weight of 30 years of family drama crashing down in that single moment. I wanted to scream, to tell her she was wrong, but my throat tightened. Claire waved the envelope, supposedly Dad's will, like a trophy, her voice dripping with triumph. "It's all here. The house, the savings, everything. It's mine." The murmurs started, low and sharp, like knives being sharpened. I could feel the stares, the pity, the judgment. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of a pew. This wasn't just about money. This was about my place in the family, about every sacrifice I'd made for Dad, about the years I spent proving I belonged. Hey, before we go deeper into this mess, let me know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. I'm curious to see how far this story travels. Now, let's get back to that day. I couldn't look at Claire. Not yet. Instead, my eyes caught the lawyer, Mr. Grayson, standing quietly in the corner. His face was unreadable, but his fingers tapped nervously on his briefcase. Something about him felt off. I didn't know it then, but that envelope in Claire's hand wasn't the whole story. Not even close. Let me take you back a bit, to make sense of why Claire's words cut so deep. Growing up in our small Ohio town, our family was the kind you'd see in a Norman Rockwell painting, on the outside. Dad was a high school teacher, Mom a nurse. We lived in a modest 2-story house with a creaky porch and a backyard where Claire and I used to chase fireflies. But beneath the surface, it was always a competition. Claire was the golden child. Straight A's, cheerleader, the one who could do no wrong. I was the quiet one, the one who stayed home to help Dad with his lesson plans when Mom got sick. I didn't mind, not really. I loved them. But Claire? She'd breeze in for holidays, flash her perfect smile, and Dad would light up like she'd hung the moon. When Mom passed 10 years ago, things got worse. Claire moved to Chicago, chasing a fancy job in marketing, while I stayed in Ohio, helping Dad with doctor's appointments, cooking his meals, paying his bills when he forgot. "You're such a good daughter, Emily," he'd say, squeezing my hand. I believed him. I thought he saw me. But Claire always had a way of stealing the spotlight. She'd call once a month, send a flashy gift, a new TV, a fancy watch, and Dad would brag about her to everyone. "My Claire's doing so well," he'd say, while I was the one scrubbing his kitchen floor. There was always this undercurrent, this unspoken rule that Claire was the favorite. Aunt Linda would gush over her, cousins would ask her for career advice, and I'd just fade into the background. I didn't realize how much it hurt until Dad got sick last year. Lung cancer, fast and brutal. I was there every day. Hospital runs, late-night talks, holding his hand when he was too weak to speak. Claire showed up twice. Each time she'd cry loudly, make a scene, and leave me to clean up the mess. "You're so good at this, Emily," she'd say, like I was the hired help. I swallowed my anger, thinking Dad's love was enough. But when he passed, and Claire stood there at the funeral with that envelope, I started to wonder if I'd been wrong about everything. The worst part? The family knew. They saw me there day in and day out. But when Claire started talking about the will, they didn't question her. Not Tom, not Aunt Linda, not even Uncle Mike, who I'd always been close to. It was like I'd been erased. And yet there was this tiny flicker of hope in my chest. Something about the way Mr. Grayson kept glancing at me, like he knew something no one else did. I didn't know what it was, but I held on to it, because if I didn't, I'd have nothing left. The funeral home felt like a pressure cooker, ready to burst. The soft organ music couldn't drown out the whispers rippling through the room after Claire's bombshell about the will. I stood near the back, clutching a crumpled tissue, trying to keep my face steady while my insides churned. Rows of folding chairs were filled with relatives, neighbors, and Dad's old teaching colleagues, all stealing glances at me or Claire. The air was thick with judgment, and I could feel every pair of eyes sizing, picking apart my every move. Claire was still near the podium, holding court with Aunt Linda and a few cousins, her voice carrying just enough for me to catch phrases like, always knew, and no surprise. She didn't even look at me, but I could feel the weight of her triumph. It was like she'd been waiting for this moment her whole life. Emily, you okay? Uncle Mike's voice startled me. He was standing close, his graying beard and kind eyes a small comfort in the chaos. But even he seemed hesitant, like he wasn't sure whose side to take. I'm fine, I lied, my voice barely above a whisper. I wasn't fine. I was humiliated, angry, and heartbroken. The room felt like it was closing in, and Claire's sharp laugh from across the room cut through me like glass. You sure? Mike pressed, lowering his voice. Claire's being, well, Claire. Don't let her get to you. I forced a smile, but it wobbled. Easier said than done. I glanced at her again, now whispering to our cousin Tom, who nodded like he was eating up every word. Then I caught Aunt Linda's eye. She quickly looked away, but not before I saw the pity in her gaze. Pity, not support. That stung worse than Claire's words. The minister stepped up to say a few final words, but I barely heard him. My eyes kept drifting to Mr. Grayson, the lawyer, who was still lingering near the side door. He was older, maybe 60, with thinning hair and a suit that looked a size too big. He hadn't said much all day, just nodded politely during the service, but now he was watching me. Not Claire, not the crowd, me. His fingers were still tapping that nervous rhythm on his briefcase, and for a split second, our eyes locked. He gave a small nod, almost like he was trying to tell me something. Then he turned away, busying himself with some papers. Claire's voice broke through again. Emily, you're not leaving already, are you? She was walking toward me now, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. A few heads turned. The reception's at the house. You should at least show up for Dad's sake. For Dad's sake? I snapped, my voice sharper than I meant. The room went quiet again. You're the one waving that envelope around like it's a prize. Don't talk to me about Dad. Her eyes narrowed, but her smile stayed smug. Oh, Emily, don't make a scene. It's embarrassing. She turned to Aunt Linda, who was right behind her. She always had a temper, didn't she? Linda let out a nervous laugh, and Tom smirked. I wanted to disappear. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and said, I'll be there, Claire, don't worry. But inside, I was screaming. Every word from her was a calculated jab, and the family just stood there, letting it happen. As the crowd started filing out toward the parking lot, I lingered near the guest book, pretending to read the signatures. I needed a moment to breathe, to escape the suffocating tension. That's when Mr. Grayson approached me, his briefcase tucked under his arm. Miss Emily, he said softly, his voice low enough that no one else could hear. Could we have a word? Privately? I blinked, caught off guard. Sure. My heart gave a little thud. Something about his tone felt urgent, like he was holding back a secret. He led me to a small side room, away from the lingering mourners. The door clicked shut behind us, and for the first time all day, I felt a flicker of hope. I didn't want to say this in front of everyone, he started, setting his briefcase on a table. His hands were steady now, but his eyes darted toward the door like he was expecting someone to barge in. Your father, he was very particular about certain things. Particular? I asked, my voice barely steady. What do you mean? He hesitated, adjusting his glasses. There's something you should know before the will reading tomorrow. It's complicated. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper, but he didn't hand it to me. Instead, he held it close, his expression unreadable. This isn't the place to discuss it. Can you come to my office in the morning, before the family meeting? My stomach twisted. Mr. Grayson, please, just tell me. Is it about the will? Did Dad really leave me nothing? My voice cracked, and I hated how desperate I sounded. He sighed, glancing at the paper. It's not that simple, Emily. Your sister, she has a document, yes. But there's more to it. I promised your father I'd handle this carefully. He paused, then added, You were there for him. He knew that. Trust me on this. I stared at him, my mind racing. What was he saying? That Claire's envelope wasn't the real will? Or was there something else? Before I could press him, the door swung open and Claire's voice cut through like a blade. "There you are, Emily. Hiding out already." She glanced at Mr. Grayson, her eyes narrowing. "What's this about?" "Just a private matter," Mr. Grayson said smoothly, slipping the paper back into his briefcase. "Funeral arrangements, you know." Claire didn't buy it. I could tell by the way her lips tightened. "Right," she said, her tone dripping with suspicion. "Well, Emily, the car's waiting. Let's go." She turned and walked out, expecting me to follow like always. I looked at Mr. Grayson, my heart pounding. "Tomorrow morning," he whispered. 8 o'clock. Don't tell anyone." I nodded. A spark of something. Hope, maybe, igniting inside me. Whatever Claire was holding over everyone's heads, it wasn't the full story. I could feel it. As I drove to the reception at Dad's house, my mind drifted back, pulling me into memories I'd tried to bury. The Ohio sun was setting, painting the sky orange, but all I could see were the years I'd spent proving my worth to a family that barely noticed. Growing up, Claire always had the spotlight, but it wasn't just her charm that pushed me into the shadows. It was the little moments, the ones that piled up like bricks until I felt walled out of my own family. I remember one Christmas, I was maybe 16, sitting at the kitchen table with Dad, helping him grade papers because Mom was working a double shift. Claire was out with friends, probably at some party, but I didn't mind. Dad and I laughed over his student's terrible spelling, and he'd pat my shoulder saying, "You're my rock, Emily." That meant everything to me. But when Claire waltzed in, late, with a new scarf and a story about some guy she met, Dad's eyes lit up. He forgot the papers, forgot me, and started asking her a million questions. I just sat there, invisible, stirring my hot chocolate until it went cold. It wasn't always like that, but it happened enough. When Mom got sick, I was the one who took her to chemo, who held her hand when she was too weak to talk. Claire would call from Chicago, promising to visit, but she'd always have an excuse, a big meeting, a trip with friends. After Mom died, I thought things might change, that Dad would see how much I was caring. But Claire had a way of swooping in, like when she sent Dad that expensive recliner for his birthday. He bragged about it for weeks, while I was the one making sure his meds were refilled and his bills were paid. The worst memory, though, was last summer, when Dad's cancer was getting bad. I'd been sleeping on the couch in his living room for weeks, waking up every few hours to check on him. One night, Claire showed up unannounced, all teary-eyed, carrying a bouquet of flowers like she was in a movie. Dad was weak, but he smiled so big when he saw her. "My Claire," he whispered, holding her hand. I stood in the doorway, exhausted, my hair a mess, and he didn't even look at me. Later, when I was washing dishes, Claire pulled me aside. "You don't have to do all this, Emily," she said, her voice sweet but sharp. "I mean, you're not his nurse." I wanted to scream that I was doing it because I loved him, because someone had to. But I just nodded, like always, and let her take the credit when Dad told everyone how thoughtful she was. Now, pulling into Dad's driveway for the reception, those memories burned. Claire was already inside, playing the grieving daughter, while I was the one who'd held Dad's hand until the end. And yet, she was the one with the will, the one everyone believed. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white, wondering if I'd spent my whole life fighting for a place in a family that didn't want me. The next morning, I barely slept. My stomach was in knots as I drove to Mr. Grayson's office at 8, like he'd asked. He'd been cryptic, but his words, "You were there for him," he knew that, kept looping in my head. I didn't tell Claire or anyone else about the meeting. I couldn't risk her swooping in again. At 9, the family gathered in a small conference room at Mr. Grayson's law firm. The air was heavy, like the funeral all over again. Claire sat at the head of the table, her envelope from yesterday now in a sleek folder, her posture screaming confidence. Aunt Linda and Tom were on her side, literally and figuratively, while Uncle Mike sat closer to me, giving me a small, encouraging nod. A few other relatives filled the chairs, their faces a mix of curiosity and discomfort. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. "Thank you all for coming. he said, his voice steady but formal. We're here to read the last will and testament of Robert James Thompson. He opened a folder, not Claire's, and started reading. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear him. He listed small things first. Dad's old watch to Uncle Mike, some savings bonds to our cousins. Then he got to the big stuff. The house, the savings, the land Dad owned outside town. To my daughter Claire Thompson, Mr. Grayson read, I leave the sum of $50,000 and my collection of rare books. Claire's smile widened, and she leaned back in her chair, shooting me a look that said, See, I told you. My stomach dropped. 50,000 wasn't everything, but it was a lot. And the way she was acting, I knew she thought the rest was hers too. And to my daughter Emily Thompson, Mr. Grayson continued, his voice slowing, I leave the family home, including all its contents, and the remainder of my estate, including my savings and the property on Maple Road. The room went dead silent. I blinked, my breath catching. Claire's smile froze, then vanished. What? She snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. That's impossible. I have System, have the will. She slammed her hand on the table, her folder sliding to the floor. I have the real will right here. Mr. Grayson didn't flinch. Miss Thompson, please, he said calmly. There's more. The room felt like it was holding its breath. My heart was racing, but I couldn't move, couldn't speak. Claire's face was red, her eyes blazing. Aunt Linda gasped softly, and Tom stared at the table like he wanted to disappear. Uncle Mike reached for my hand under the table and gave it a quick squeeze. There's been a misunderstanding, Mr. Grayson said, pulling out another document. The envelope you presented, Miss Claire, was an outdated draft. Your father revised his will 6 months ago with my assistance. This is the legally binding version. Claire shot to her feet. This is ridiculous. He would never— Sit down, Claire, Uncle Mike said, his voice firm but quiet. She glared at him but sank back into her chair, her hands trembling. I couldn't process it. The house, the savings, the land. It was mine? After everything Dad had seen me? My eyes stung, but I forced myself to stay composed. Claire's gaze burned into me, but I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Not yet. Mr. Grayson cleared his throat again. There's a letter from your father, Emily. He asked that it be read aloud. He unfolded a piece of paper, his voice softening. To my Emily, who was there when I needed her most. You never asked for anything, but you gave everything. This is my way of saying thank you. I'm proud of you. Love, Dad. The room blurred as tears filled my eyes. I heard a choked sound from Claire, but I didn't look. All I could think about was Dad's words, his voice in my head, finally seeing me. The silence in Mr. Grayson's office was deafening, like the air had been sucked out of the room. Claire's face was a mask of shock, her mouth half open, the folder she'd been clutching now crumpled on the floor. I could feel every pair of eyes darting between me, her, and Mr. Grayson, who stood calmly at the head of the table, holding Dad's letter like it was a sacred artifact. My heart was still racing from his words. You gave everything. I'm proud of you. They echoed in my head, drowning out the chaos unfolding around me. Claire broke the silence first. This is a mistake, she shouted, her voice cracking. She pointed at Mr. Grayson, her finger trembling. You're lying. Dad would never do this to me. Miss Thompson, please, Mr. Grayson said, his tone steady but firm. This will is notarized and witnessed. It's legally binding. I was with your father when he made these changes. He was very clear about his intentions. Clear? Claire laughed, but it was bitter, almost manic. He was sick. He wasn't thinking straight. Emily probably manipulated him, hovering around like some saint. I flinched, her words cutting deep, but I didn't respond. I couldn't. My throat was tight and my hands were shaking in my lap. Uncle Mike leaned closer, his voice low. Let it go, Claire. You're making this worse. She spun on him. You're on her side now, after everything I've done for this family? Her voice was loud enough to make Aunt Linda jump, and Tom shifted uncomfortably, avoiding everyone's eyes. The other relatives sat frozen, like they were watching a car crash they couldn't look away from. Mr. Grayson raised a hand, his patience thinning. "There's one more thing," he said, pulling another envelope from his briefcase. "Your father left a video message to be played in the event of any disputes." He glanced at Claire, then at me, his expression unreadable. "Shall I play it?" Claire's eyes widened, but she didn't say no. I nodded, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Mr. Grayson connected a small USB drive to his laptop, and a projector flickered to life on the wall. There was Dad, sitting in his favorite armchair in the living room, looking frail but sharp-eyed. The timestamp on the video showed it was recorded just 4 months ago. "Hi, everyone," Dad's voice said, weak but steady. My chest tightened at the sound. "If you're watching this, I'm gone, and there's probably some arguing going on." He gave a small, tired smile. "Claire, Emily, my girls, I love you both. But I need to set things right. Claire, you've got your life, your career, and I'm proud of you. But Emily, she's been my rock. She was there every day, through the worst of it. I know I didn't always show it, but I saw you, Emily. The house, the savings, the land, it's yours. You earned it. Don't let anyone tell you different." The video cut off, and the room erupted. Claire let out a strangled cry, slamming her hands on the table. "This is insane," she yelled, tears streaming down her face. "He didn't mean that. He couldn't have." But I barely heard her. I was staring at the blank wall where Dad's face had been, tears spilling down my cheeks. He saw me. All those years, all those quiet sacrifices, he'd seen them. I pressed a hand to my mouth, trying to hold myself together as Claire's shouts faded into background noise. The room cleared out quickly after that. Claire stormed out, her heels clicking furiously, leaving her folder behind. Aunt Linda hesitated, then followed her, muttering something about calming her down. Tom slipped out without a word, his head down. The other relatives mumbled awkward goodbyes, avoiding my eyes like they were ashamed for believing Claire's lies. Uncle Mike stayed, his hand on my shoulder. "You okay, kid?" he asked softly. I nodded, wiping my face. "Yeah, I think I am." For the first time in years, I felt whole. Not because of the house or the money, but because Dad's words had given me back something I thought I'd lost, my place in his heart. Mr. Grayson approached, handing me a copy of the will and Dad's letter. "Your father was adamant about this," he said quietly. "He knew Claire might fight it. That's why he made the video. He wanted you to know the truth." "Thank you," I whispered, clutching the papers. "For everything." In the days that followed, Claire didn't call or show up. I heard through Tom that she was telling everyone Dad was confused at the end, but no one seemed to buy it anymore. The family was quieter now, some even apologetic, though I didn't need their guilt. I had what mattered: Dad's trust, his love, and a home filled with memories of him. Looking back, I don't hate Claire. She's my sister, and maybe one day we'll talk again. But I've learned something. Family isn't about who shouts the loudest or who gets the biggest piece of the pie. It's about who shows up day after day, even when no one's watching. I did that for Dad, and he saw it. That's enough for me. Hey, thanks for sticking with my story. It means a lot to share it. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? And if you connected with this, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss the next one. Let's keep these stories going.